Well, the saddest thing is back in 1978, 912 American citizens committed suicide by drinking cyanide, Kool-Aid laced with cyanide. And they did it, not only did they do it, they first gave it to their children. There were 215 children there. And then they gave it to their parents, and then they took it. And if they didn't take it, they were injected by friends or family. And the blind obedience was to this guy, Reverend Jim Jones, pastor of People's Temple in San Francisco and LA, in the jungles of Guyana, where they were setting up a utopia, a socialist utopian environment. It's not some random sect. This is Church of Christ Disciples. It's a church that Nixon belonged to. It's a church that some of you may belong to. So it's a sect within that church. But Reverend Jones, over time, who started out being merciful, promoting brotherhood, he was a big celebrity in San Francisco. Every politician that came to San Francisco took a picture with him. And he becomes the angel of death. In my book, I have the citation. I don't think it's on the website, but I have the citation where you can listen to that last hour speech, one of the most persuasive speeches in history, where you can see how he takes these people and convinces them to take their own lives. So this is my ultimate example of blind obedience to authority. So what do I learn from the Milgram study? Not that it's easy to seduce people to do bad. It's here are messages that makes us aware of not only cult recruiters, so we have Stephen Hassan in the audience, one of the world's leading experts on cults and how to resist cult influence, but also, you know, any hustler, any con man or con woman. The first step is you need an ideology. You need a big story. You need something that people say, yeah, that makes sense. I will go along with it. I made a joke about national security, but that was the ideology in all the fascist countries in Central America, South America, and Greece in the 60s and 70s, where the enemy was communists and socialists. In fact, most of them communists and socialist faculty and students who were tortured, who were executed. And we actually, one of the books I have is Violence Workers in Brazil. I actually interviewed 31 of these guys who were tortured and death squad executions. That's another story. Evil begins with a small step. It's the 15-volt thing. Just keep that in mind. It's, you know, just sign here. Just give 10 cents. Just make this minimal thing. You can imagine Enron on Friday night. Somebody said, hey, the numbers don't add up and we really have to get home. Why don't you just change this number so it'll balance out? You say, sure, no big deal. And then next Friday it's, you know, gee, the numbers are really even worse. You know, why don't you do... And suddenly you're on that path, 15, 30, 45, and down. And suddenly now you're cooking the books, and what's going to happen is thousands of people are going to lose their life savings. And you want successively small steps, because at any point, what you're doing is not really different than you just did. So at no point is, wow, how am I doing this? And we'll see when I talk about the Stanford Prison Study, this is what happened. Even though it was compressed in 6 days, within each 8-hour shift, kids did bad things, and then did slightly worse things, and slightly worse things, slightly worse things. And they were doing things that they would never do even at the beginning of an 8-hour shift, but now they're gradually led along. You have to have an authority. Somebody dressed well in a lab coat, a uniform, medals, a hat, all this thing, in charge. But then what happens is that just authority, that compassionate person, shifts over time and becomes an authoritarian monster, saying, you've got to do this. And we don't know how to deal with that transformation. Our parents tell us to respect authority, meaning them, meaning the church, meaning teachers, and that's good, we need that. But they don't tell us to disrespect unjust authority. All the horrible teachers we've had, all the parents who abuse kids, all the prison guards, all the policemen who abuse people, especially in the ghetto, there's nowhere in our training on how to disobey unjust authority. Rules are impersonal ways of controlling behavior. So if I'm here now and I have a lung problem, you start smoking, this is like years ago when people smoked, I'd have to say, please don't smoke. Suppose you said, I'm sorry, I want to smoke. Then it's a personal thing. Now I say, can you read? See the sign? No smoking. Once there's a rule, there's always a rule enforcer, meaning I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to get your ass in jail. And so nothing personal, just business. You got to do this thing. But you want the rules to be vague so you can manipulate them, like nobody told you that failure to respond is a rule and error. And you want to keep changing them. So once you say the rule says, it's like the law says. See, I didn't remember that. Well, it's you have a bad memory. And then you want to do the Orwellian thing. You want to use language to so that you are the teacher helping, when in fact you're shocking the shit out of this person. So you're an aggressor hurting, but as long as you keep thinking, I'm a soldier bringing democracy, and I'm bringing democracy by wiping out villages, then it's fine. You need the models of compliance. You need people to say, look, everybody in your neighborhood has bought my magazine. Look at the names of all these people. And you say, wow, if everybody else, it must be something good. Well, they just went around, copied the names off the mailboxes of everybody, and now you're sucked in. You want people to dissent. That makes them feel good. I'm not that kind of person. Yeah, I know. I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to shock the puppy. I'm never going to... That's really good. From the puppy's point of view, it doesn't give a shit. The puppy says, stop pressing the button, because that's the behavioral compliance. We want you to keep doing the thing and tell us over and over again what a good person you are. And last but not least, make exiting difficult. In most studies of date rape, that's the key. No woman goes out with a rapist. You go out with a classmate, somebody you know in the neighborhood, somebody you meet in a bar, and suddenly he's all over you in one second. He's saying, time out, no, it's not good, and he's not buying it. And if you are a traditional woman, you don't know how to exit, because what's important to you is to be a proper woman. And you don't scream, because women don't scream. You don't kick them in the balls. You don't punch them in the face, because women don't do that, and suddenly you're raped. While Milgram is doing that, I'm reading Lord of the Flies by Golding. And remember, the key of that story is Christian choir boys are on a deserted island, a plane crashes, and at first democracy takes over. That means good boys protect little boys. But then they run out of food. And so that's the conflict that Golding presents with us. And the only food on the island are wild pigs. A bunch of boys go hunting, they corner the pig, and they're about to spear it, and they can't do it because killing is inhibited in their religion. And then what Goulding does in chapter 6, he has Jack Merridew, the head of these boys, take his clothes off, paint himself in a mask, like the mask you saw in my little scenario. Some of you know that that's the Detroit rock group called Insane Clown Posse. This is an aside. Imagine you are a prisoner in Abu Ghraib. You have a soldier walking around like that with a Harley-Davidson cap with that mask. If that wouldn't scare you, I don't know what would. So it's really all about... And now they change. Not only can they kill the pig, they enjoy killing. And then they kill Piggy, the intellectual boy, and then fascism takes over. So for me, that's the synopsis, the Reader's Digest version of it. So the question is, Lord, is anonymity enough to release sexual and violent urges that are ordinarily inhibited in a situation that gives you permission to either be aggressive or to be sexual? And when you do that, the reason we are usually moral people, the reason we don't cheat, lie, steal, etc. all the time, is there's something called conscience. There's something called a sense of personal accountability. It's really self-constraint. Those are called cognitive controls. Once you're anonymous, it's almost like you give up your self-identity, and then you're totally under situational control. So my students say, is that psychologically valid? Social psychology, I don't know. Let's do an experiment. So the experiment is an old experiment at NYU. Students from introductory psychology come. They're greeted by my assistant, Scott Frazier. He gives them the cover story, again, the big lie, that this is a two-part study. There are women who are trying to be creative under stress. They're trying to be creative. Your job is to stress them. But we don't want them to see your reactions, so we're going to cover up any nonverbal cues. Put them in big lab coats, put a hood over their head, take away their names, your 1, 2, 3, 4, put them in a group in the dark. They meet the women first on a tape recording, and then they're going to meet them in person. We give them a sample of the shock, which really hurts, and now it's not going to be shock intensity. The measure we're looking at is how long they hold their finger down. It's the duration. And the longer you hold their finger down, the more this woman is going to scream and twist and turn.